Not wanting to waste any time, the goatherd took all the rabbits back to the palace. The king wasn't happy.
An impossible task. An impossible task. I must think of an impossible task,
he muttered when he saw all the rabbits back in their hutches. That evening, when soup was served, the king had a brainwave.
Lentils and peas,
he shouted out as he took his last spoonful. Then he summoned the goatherd to an underground room in the palace. Lentils and peas had been mixed up and put into a huge pile.
To become a member of our royal family,
the king told the goatherd,
you must separate all the peas from the lentils. You have just one night to complete this task.
It can't be done, he told the king, although he knew all along it could be done. So, when the king was out of sight, he picked up his flute and played it. Out of the brickwork came an army of ants, and one by one they divided the lentils and the peas into separate piles. By morning, the job was done. The next morning, the king stepped gaily into the cellar, quite prepared to see a defeated man. He couldn't believe his ears when he heard the goatherd say, "Your task is complete, sire." The king had to admit he'd done well. But by now, he was getting worried that he was going to have a goatherd as a son-in-law. The king wouldn't give in. He really didn't want a commoner as a member of his family.
You've done very well, but there is just one other task that's a tradition in our family. In one night only, you must eat all the bread that is stored in the royal larder.
The king led the boy to a huge room where the shelves were piled high with bread. So many loaves would have fed several armies. Once again, the goatherd knew he could count on his magic flute, so he put its extraordinary powers to the test. As soon as he played the instrument, a small army of rats and mice appeared. They were certainly hungry, because they attacked the loaves of bread in the same way that an army would attack the enemy. With the sweet notes of the flute playing in the background, the little creatures tucked into the loaves until there wasn't a single crumb of bread left. The next morning, the king went to find the goatherd, who greeted him with a broad smile.
Well, you don't seem to be any fatter, considering you've eaten so much bread, said the king. How on earth are you managing to eat your breakfast as well? You must have the appetite of a wolf. You won't manage this, whispered the king to a courtier who was sitting next to him. A huge, sizzling steak on a silver platter was brought straight from the royal kitchens. Delicious,
said the goatherd as he tucked into it. Very tasty. The princess and the king couldn't believe he was eating all this. Throughout the meal, the king thought desperately about another task for the goatherd. In the end, he asked his daughter if she could think of a difficult task for him.
"Show us what a good storyteller you are," she said. "If you can tell the court a story that will keep them on the edge of their seats, you will win my hand in marriage."
The goatherd stood up and began to speak to the court. How shall I begin? Oh, yes. Once upon a time, there were a king who dressed up as an old countryman and a princess who dressed up as a country girl. One day... Before he could go any further, the king clapped his hand over the goatherd's mouth. Although the goatherd had barely started to speak, the court were already captivated and jeered at the king for doing this.
Let him go on!
Cried all the courtiers. But the king knew that if he let him finish his story, everyone would realize how he and his daughter had deceived the goatherd. There was no way out of it. The king had to accept
but the goatherd had completed all the tasks.
You are going to have to marry him, my dear,
he told the stony-faced princess. So, with a heavy heart, the princess prepared herself for the wedding. Soon, a complete wardrobe of clothes fit for a princess's husband arrived. And indeed, the goatherd really looked the part. On the wedding day, he looked like a man of noble birth. Even the princess swooned with delight when she saw how handsome he looked. She felt so ashamed of herself that she swore she would never break a promise again. As for the king, he felt so guilty about his deceitful ways that he went to live the life of a simple peasant for a year and a day.